Hi, it's Dave from Hectors Smokehouse, and today what I'm going to be doing is prepping and cooking a brisket. So this one is a share Wagyu, full blood brisket. You can see the point on this end and the flat. I'll show you that more when I unwrap it. What I'm doing today is I'm doing Texas style, so it's going to be very light on the trim and just with salt and pepper on it. So it's going to be very simple and very easy, so it's not a competition style brisket that I'd normally use, but I certainly cook this more at home than I do competition styles. So I'll go through the video, show you quickly how to trim it, and then I'll go through the whole cook during this preparation. Here we go, so here's the brisket straight out of the package, and what you can do is I'm going to try and sort of explain to you the different parts of the brisket for those who don't know, and there's quite a few people often ask this. So obviously this is at a point end brisket, this being the point and this being the flat at this end. This is where you make the burnt ends out of, is this end. It's the highly fatty end. And what you'll see is this is a lot thicker at this end where this point is. And it's basically two separate muscles. There's this muscle on the top which sort of goes underneath here and can be taken off if you want to. There's a fat layer that runs between the point and the flat. It sort of comes around to about here, gets really thin. But this end is nice and thick, so it's difficult to see. If I turn it over, you should be able to see the fat layer in there, so it's here. So this is the, so if I turn it that way, this is the point, this is the flat down here, and the point you can trim through there, through that fat layer, and that'll actually take off that whole point if you want to. Once the meat's actually cooked, it's very easy to do that. I normally put on a pair of cotton gloves with some food prep grill gloves as well, and when this is still hot I run my fingers just straight through there and it just separates the point from the flat. But a lot of people actually trim that and take that off separately. So what I'm going to do is do a bit of a trim on here. It needs a little bit of trimming, not massive amounts, but it does need some trimming, so I'll go through and show you that trim. I'll start the trim and then I'll probably fast forward towards the end of it. But what I'm trying to do is underneath here I want to take as much of this off as I can of these pieces of fat that are underneath here. I'm not too bothered about on the top, but I want to try and take these off. So if you try to just lift it up a little bit and get a bit of an angle, you can then start to trim these off. Really important to have a sharp knife. I'm just about to get all of mine resharpened so that it's a lot easier to actually cut this off, but you can see it comes off reasonably easy as long as you've got a reasonable knife. So I'll do this part and then I'll come back and I'll show you the rest of the trim. As I said, I'm using this as just a Texas brisket, so I'm not preparing it for a comp or anything. But what you can see is I've trimmed off quite a bit of the fat underneath and tidied that up, and you can see the lovely marbling and all the strands that are going through there. And the thing you've got to be careful with if you're cooking in a comp, normally your flat that comes out of the comp comes out of this area, so you've got to make sure that area is reasonably nice in a comp. But what you do get is these pockets where it's been taken off the carcass, and sometimes when they've butchered it, they've not butchered it very well, and unfortunately sometimes you get them right across these areas when you're actually doing a comp. So for what we're doing, this is absolutely fantastic. I don't need to trim really anything more off there. And off here, I normally I'll trim this down and leave maybe sort of 6-7 mil over this area and leave plenty of fat on there, and the same round here. So I'll trim some of that fat off. I just don't like this sort of stringy stuff that's here, so I'll take some of that stringy stuff off this part of the point. So if you remember, the flat down there, this is the point here, and you can see the muscle going across this way. So that's the point, that's where your burnt ends come from if you're going to do burnt ends, but we're not today. And this is the flat down at the bottom, which goes underneath the point. And so I'm going to trim off I'll trim quite a bit of the fat off the point as well. The point is pretty fatty anyway, so I'm going to take quite a bit off here. But leave it around here, around the actual flat side of it. So again, I'll start trimming this and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm finished. Okay, so you can see me that we've started to trim this down. Quite a bit of fat over that side now. But we're looking pretty tidy over that side. Again, sometimes this cavity is a bit open. That line there is the difference between the flat on the bottom, and then all of this above here is the point, which is your burnt ends. So yeah, again, let's try and take some of this out. And it's not really fat, it's all stringy crap, this. So I just don't like it to be there. And it sort of peels out. I think I'd be happy if it was just fat, but it's not. It's a stringy piece of crap. So normally, and these ones that I get from Share are pretty well trimmed down in the first place. This one's needed a bit more trimming than I normally would do, but to be honest, it's not too bad. A lot of these things just sort of peel off like paper. It's weird. So there you go, it's nearly there. I've taken plenty off this end. You can still see there's quite a bit of fat there, so I'll trim some of this down as well. I'm not going to go crazy, but we'll leave quite a bit of fat on there. But we'll trim a little bit more down, and again you can see how much is there. It's getting that 5 or 6 mil, somewhere in that region. So I reckon for doing just this, I'm going to trim this off a little bit as well. It's quite a bit of fat just in that edge, so I'll trim a thin piece off there and tidy that up. But for doing salt and pepper brisket, this is perfect. That's not too bad. Okay, so that's just about done. I'm reasonably happy with that. As I said, you know, most of this is the point muscle, so you can see the way, look at the difference in the grades. So you can see this is a point, and the muscle is running this way, and this is the flat, and the muscle's running across this way. So 2 different muscles, one running this way, which is your fatty point for your burnt ends, and then the other one is your flat. And typically, say in a competition, or even if I'm cooking for myself, quite often I'll put my hand through there, separate, and then cube this up and turn that into burnt ends. I'm not going to do that today. And final tip, and this is a little bit frozen on this end, but I'll show you the last part, is when you're going to trim this and you want to trim it in the right direction, you want to be cutting across the grain. So you can see the grain's going this way. You want to be cutting 90 degrees across there. So you can see which way it's running. So to try and give you an idea, it's very hard to see that once it's been cooked. So what I do is I go to the end, I sort of get that sort of angle, and then I'll cut off a piece at the end, which will be at 90 degrees. And then this piece, my dog's happy, he normally gets that piece, and there you go, you can see the marbling in there in this Share Wagyu. But that's a piece that goes to the dog, and I've got a nice starting point now. So when it comes to the cook and I've cooked, I'll have this turned over, I've got a nice starting point, and I know I can just keep cutting this way, and I know I'm going across the flat. In this case, because I'm doing it Texas, I'm going to cut into the point, so you're going to get some of the point and some of the flat in the actual end cook. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the trim. As I say, I'm not doing anything special with this. So what I'm going to do now is put the salt and pepper on. So what I do typically, got my measure, I'm using 3 tablespoons of kosher salt, 3 tablespoons of black cracked pepper. So that normally is enough to cover a brisket. As I say, not anything exact or anything like that, but it gets it roughly right. This is the stuff I normally buy, and buy that from just a shop near Queen Vic Market that one of my friends put me onto, and it's all pre-cracked. It's a nice size, so we'll put 3 of those in there as well. And then just trying to quickly sort of turning these together to get that salt and the pepper mixed up a little bit. And it is hard to do that, but there you go. So that gives you an idea of what it looks like. So normally I use some sort of a binding agent to actually make it stick a little bit. Now it can be just the meat juices that are on there already, or quite a lot of people either use mustard, so that's where you see the yellow mustard, or In this case, I'm just going to use some Worcester sauce. So I've got some lean perrins. I'm just going to sprinkle some of this all over, like so. I'll give that a good rub in. So actually rub that nicely in, and it just makes it a little bit nice and wet and makes it bind a little bit. And then I'm going to start to layer on this salt and pepper. As I say, there might not be enough here. This brisket, by the way, started off at 6.1 kilos, so it was a reasonable sized brisket. The ones I buy from Share do vary, so I think maybe up to about 7 kilos is probably one of the bigger ones that I get, and then down as low as 4.5 kilos, so they can change quite a bit. As I say, this might not be anywhere near enough. So they can change, and there's been quite a bit trimmed off it, so I expect it's going to be now around about, I don't know, maybe 5.5 now with it's trimmed. But you know, you can be pretty liberal with this. It takes the flavour really well, and to be honest, this really makes the flavour, does the salt and pepper. A lot of people, you know, use rubs and everything, and they work really well. But I think for home and simpleness, and just being able to do this easily, I think this is a much easier way of doing brisket. And people always love this, but I just find it so much more easier than any other way. Okay, so that's one side done. Put that in a bit. And we'll spin her over. And again, probably looks like I need a bit more, so I'll just mix some more up first. Okay, so we'll do the other side now. So I think I've had, altogether, this will be 5 tablespoons of each. Get onto that lovely point, and underneath there, into the flap. So what I'm going to do is do the same thing. These trays are really good as well. You know, I've got a couple of nice big trays, but it's easy. It keeps us, stops you from making a mess on the bench top, or as much of a mess on the bench top, which is pretty good. And then what you'd have seen when I actually trimmed the brisket in the first place, I had some white card cutting boards, so I bought them from the States. And again, I don't use the cutting boards for most of this sort of stuff. I actually just prep on those white cardboards, and I think they work fantastic. I think they're really good. And again, just easy to fold up once you've done it and throw in the bin, and it just saves a little bit more mess. Okay, so I reckon we're about there now. I don't think that looks too bad. So I'm going to leave that out now. You can leave it out for you know, a couple of hours if you want to. I'm only going to leave this for a short period of time, because I've got the smoker on and I'm cooking for my son and his mates tonight. So there you go, that's Texas Style Brisket, all prepped up. And what we're going to do is we're going to cook this on the Yoder YS640 pellet cooker. I'm going to use cherry and pecan in this, because I'm in a bit of a rush. I normally cook at 225, I'm going to cook around about 260 and try and get it done during the day. Part way through the day, I'll wrap it in butcher's paper, so some of the orange butcher's paper, and then yeah, probably 7-8 hours later it should be about ready. So I'll show you it going on to the Yoder in a few minutes. Okay, so I'm cooking this one today. As I say, I'm trying to get it done a little bit quicker, so I'm trying to run at 260. Great thing with the Yoder, there you go, that's actually running at 260 and is stable at the moment, which is good, so that'll cut my cook time down quite significantly. And it's early in the morning now, so you know, I don't want to be going all night. My friend Caleb's mates are coming around sort of 7 o'clock-ish, so I want it all ready by then. Hopefully I've got it put away and rested in an esky by then. So yeah, so you can see there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook it on the top shelf. I'm going to cook it with the point end towards the fire, which is typically warmer. It does get really hot towards the chimney as well, but it'll be warmer over this side, so this can take a bit more heat. Got a lot more fat with the fat layer in there. So yeah, so very simply, I'll take her out and put her in there. You know, it's nice and covered from all the edges from any of the direct heat getting around there, so that should cook beautifully. And then what the intention will be is I'll put some iGrill probes into it, so I know the temperature during the day. I'll get it to about 160, 165, maybe 3-4 hours into the cook, and then that's when I'll come back and I'll wrap it in the butcher's paper and put it back in there. So I'll show you that later on in the day. There you go, just a little bit of a better view of the brisket on there. Sat on there nicely, and we'll come back in a few hours and see what it's up to. So my favourite temp control device is the iGrill 2. These work fantastically well, and the first iGrill was really poor. I'll do a review on this later on, but this works really well and maintains the temperature. Look, by now I'm pretty good. I can sort of manage my meat, and I know when it's done by feel, but even so, I'm a bit geeky, so I actually like to use these because it just sort of helps me out from my geeky point of view. So I'll just show you this going on. It just sits on the side there of the Yoder. We'll put this in, maybe go underneath here, under the meat, so we've got a temperature, and we understand the temperature under there, and then we'll pick a point in here, and I'm going to probably go into the main point of the flat down there, and I put a couple of when you saw me prepping this, I've got a Nomex tape. I've got a bit of a gap there, so what I'll typically do is I set the gap where the Nomex is, take the lid down, and that normally covers that off pretty well and just sits in that gap. So yeah, I'll just keep my eye on that and watch the temperature throughout the day. So there you go, there's a brisket. It's been on for about 4 hours or so now. So I've just been doing some apple juice, spritzing with some apple juice. I think I'm doing it about 260, somewhere around there. Put a water pan in there to try and keep some moisture in there as well. I'll get it to about 160, and then I'll look towards wrapping it in the brown paper. I'll show you it again soon. Okay, so we'll just have a look at the brisket. It's about 160, 165 now. So I think it's about ready to get wrapped up in the brown paper. So it's looking really, really good. So we'll see what it looks like wrapped up in a few seconds. Okay, so there you go, there's a brisket on the brown paper, and we'll have a go at trying to wrap it up now. Okay, so I'm just going to spin that over, and that should be nice, and that's going to go onto the pit. So there you go. We'll put it back on there, we'll keep the point facing that end. So this time, not really fussed, I've got the flat here, so I'll just find a place as well and get the probe in there, which will be good, and we'll leave it now to cook in the brown paper for another maybe 3-4 hours or so. Okay, let's have a look at it when it comes out. So the light's starting to drop a little bit, so I really wanted to go through the process that I do to check whether the meat's ready, the brisket's ready. In this case, I know it's not up to temperature, but I'm going to show you what I typically do. So we're probably about 195 now. You can see the brisket in there. I've got my thermopen. Really important is your thermopen. And what I'm going to do is start going into the meat. And in here you're going to see the temperature go up probably to about 190, somewhere in that region. 186, 187. But what I'm more bothered about is what the meat feels like. So I'm still quite a bit off in terms of temperature, but I can feel the meat, and I can still feel there's a bit of tension in there. You know, it's not going through like butter, and you want it to be going in there like butter, so it's still got quite a bit to go. So I'm more bothered about the feel than I am about the temperature, but it gives you a good idea. And you know, you can even feel the meat and actually push on the meat to feel what it feels like. And that still looks as though and feels like it's still got a bit to go. So I'll leave it on there again for another, probably another half an hour before I need to do anything. But really I just wanted to show you the process I go through. That feel is more important than what it actually, what the temperature reads. But the temperature read is a good gauge. If you're getting somewhere around that 200, 203, I cooked a little bit quicker, so it might be 203, 205. That gives me a good idea, but what I'm after is more that feel. It should go through like a knife through butter. It should be silky smooth, and that's when you know you've got it perfect. So I'm going to look in now and just quickly check the temperature. Looks like they were about 197, 200, somewhere around there. And as long as it feels reasonably tender, then I'm going to be happy. So we'll just test again. Yeah, they're going in really, oh yeah, see, nice and easy once I get past the stuff. Oh yeah, nice and easy then. So I'm happy with that. They seem as though they're pretty well done. They're about 200 degrees. So I'm going to take that out. I'll move this down to here. Maybe just move that around and across. And then I'm just going to foil them up. So double foil in this case. And then they're going to go into, I've got what's called a Canberra. So I'll double foil them. These will carry on cooking for a while. So make sure that's really nice and tight around there. And I'll leave them for a minimum of an hour to actually to let them relax. So a minimum of an hour in there, and then in an hour's time I'll do it. I'll cut them. In the Canberra I've left them for as long as 5 or 6 hours, and even after that 5 or 6 hours the meat's still been really hot as well. So I'll move these inside and I'll show you them going into the Canberra. So once the meat's ready, I actually put it into a Canberra. This keeps food warm for a long time. So all I'll do is slide it in there. So I'll use this in competitions, but also at home. If you don't have a Canberra, really easy. Get an esky, wrap your food maybe 3 or 4 times in foil. Once you've wrapped it in the foil, line the bottom of the esky with a towel, and put the meat in the tray. And then obviously just put on top of that some more toweling, and then close it in the esky. 2 to 3 hours, no problem. It'll keep really hot. If you're lucky, and if you've got it really insulated well, you maybe get 5 or 6 hours and the meat's still good to go. And someone can smell the food, so he's having a good sniff around at the moment. So I'll show you this when I actually start to cut it. Okay, so let's have a look and see whether this is any good or not. So this has been left for about an hour to rest, and you can see it's very hot still. So the front bit's now taking it out of the wrapping. The meat feels tender, which is good, so fingers crossed this is okay. Okay. So there's the brisket. And these, yeah, it feels pretty good actually, so that should be okay. Now what I'll try and do is lift her up, and you can see she's very loose. I'll put her onto there and just move that out of the way. Okay, let's have a look what it looks like then. That feels pretty good. That's cutting very nicely. We'll have a look in a minute and see what the meat hangs like. Now obviously this is just the flat at this end. You can see the smoke ring across there, but this is just the flat at this end. And as we go along, we'll start getting into the point, and there's a lot more moisture in that point, and there's also that fat stream that runs in between. So when you see wobbly briskets, it's not really how well they're done, it's just the actual fat in the middle, which is, I don't know, like gelatin I suppose, and is all wobbly. So this is getting to the juicy end. So when you're actually doing this and serving this, you've got a bit of point and a bit of, I'll move that back a bit, and you can see you've got a bit of point and everything else. You see how that falls over my finger, so that's beautiful, and it should pull apart really easy, which is just perfect. So I reckon this is actually a really good one. I'll turn it and show you the point and the flat. So the flat is on the top, point's underneath, and you can see the fat in between there, and it is really juicy. You can see that sort of, that's all the fat in there. So I'll do a few more slices this way, and then we'll turn it on its side. But this is looking really good. So yeah, you can see that's just beautiful. Look at the fat and moisture in there. So I'll turn it on its side now, and obviously we're getting into that point. So then we'll start. I'll cut that across there. I'll keep chopping this one this way. This will be fantastic for the sandwiches we're about to do. And again, you can see really nice. See the smoke ring in there? And they're looking beautiful. You can see the fat and everything oozing out of them. They're just going to be amazing pieces. Yeah, they're going to go really well in the rolls. And really this is where you get into the end, which is where the burnt ends are. So this is one of the best flavour parts because it's got all that fat in. It's absolutely beautiful flavours. So I've cut them a little bit thicker. This I'll carry on, because this is the flat, I'll carry on the way I was cutting the flat. This is a really nice cooked brisket. It's not overdone, so it's not falling apart, and it's not underdone where it's too tight and doesn't bend over your finger. That's always a good test, is checking whether it bends over your finger okay, but this seems to be going really, really well. So I'm pretty happy with this. I'll maybe speed some of this up at the end. Beautiful. Okay, I'll give you a bit of a maybe a close-up of what this looks like. So there's the brisket. You can see quite a lot of the smoke ring at that end as I actually go down and see this part which has got the point and the flat in. But yeah, that looks really good.